They declined, so let's talk to their designated surrogate, Tory MP Chris Philp. Nice to have you here, and I suspect there'll be a lot.
Because it won't last long enough to see this Parliament through. Simply the by-election phenomenon, which will start unavoidably and will reflect public disquiet, which is always there in the midterm, is a bigger threat than can be met by what looks like a very fragile relationship, if it happens, with the DUP.
So is there anything that Theresa May can say tomorrow which would give her the authority to reset the clock and start again?
I think that it will need a new leader to do that.
Lord Heseltine, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we did ask the government for an interview, but they declined. So let's talk to their designated surrogate, Tory MP Chris Philp. Nice to have you here. And I suspect there'll be a lot you disagree with in that interview, Chris Philp. He painted a picture, Lord Heseltine, of a leader on borrowed time.
Well, I don't recognise that. There's a lot in Lord Heseltine's comments I disagree with. For example, the two main parties who got 80% of the vote in the election both said clearly we are going to leave the European Union, we are going to come out of the customs union, and we are going to come out of the single market.
So nothing has to change on the direction of Brexit?
No, I don't think so, because, as I say, the two main parties had the same things in their manifesto on that key point.
Why did your Chancellor today suggest a very different set of priorities need to be put forward then?
Well, I don't think he did. He said we're leaving the European Union. He said that we are going to be leaving the customs union and the single
Jobs
market.
and the economy first.
But he said that we would obviously be prioritising the economy in the negotiations, and that is in terms of the free trade deal. And there's no change there. If you look at the Lancaster House speech a few months ago or the Brexit white paper, it was very clear in those documents.
So Theresa May is going to carry you through, what, 5-year Parliament to the next election, you believe that?
Well, look, I haven't got a crystal ball, but what I do know is when I went to the 1922 committee...
What's that code for?
It's not code for anything. I haven't got a crystal ball. I'm not going to... You know, after I thought that we would vote to remain and that Donald Trump would never become US president, I've given up making political predictions. What I do know is that the 1922 committee, about a week ago, all of my parliamentary colleagues, about 320 of us, you know, were cheering the Prime Minister who came back having beaten the Labour Party by 60 seats and 1 million votes, and we were all firmly behind her.
Do you agree that the manifesto as was has been ditched, and what we're going to see tomorrow is something has to be much more consensual?
Well, I'm actually quite excited by the Queen's speech and by what we can do for our country in the coming years, particularly in terms of helping people on low incomes, helping people who are just about managing. So I'm expecting and hoping to see in the manifesto, in the Queen's speech tomorrow, confirmation that we're going to keep on putting up the minimum wage. We're going to raise those tax thresholds to help people on lower incomes avoid tax.
Police cuts?
And, well, we've already said, I think a year or two ago, we're going to protect police budgets. So the police budget is protected already.
That's different, isn't it? Police funding, though, is the end to specific police cuts which have been going ahead, which we're now hearing won't be taken.
Well, I think there was so the police budget is being protected and has been for 2 years. Now, there was a proposal to change the way it was allocated between different regions, and it may be that you're referring to.
What I'm saying is, will it change direction? We've heard lots of things like she won't cancel free school meals for kids, she won't take away much-needed funding for police on the front line of terror. Is this a new direction that you support and that she needs to go
with? I think there were some messages to learn from the election, which I think will be listened to. But on the terror funding point, we are spending, I think it's £2 billion extra on anti-terrorism. That was announced about a year ago, so there is more money going into that, which is quite right.
The DUP, where are we now with that? I mean, you heard Lord Heseltine say it was irrelevant because there simply won't be a government for very long.
Well, I just don't agree with Lord Heseltine. I saw last week 320 of my colleagues enthusiastically supporting the government. I think...
Just on the DUP specifically, then?
Well, look, I mean, the deal clearly hasn't been reached. Clearly, the government and the Prime Minister have been busy this week with the Brexit negotiations and that awful fire. I'm confident there will be an arrangement reached by the time of the vote on the Queen's speech,
which is about a week. And you're looking forward to a deal with the DUP?
Well, I think there'll be a sensible arrangement. They don't want to see Jeremy Corbyn running the country any more than we do, and I'm sure an arrangement will be reached. Of course, it's not going to be a full coalition. It's going to be a confidence and supply arrangement where they support the government on key votes.
Does it make you gulp going into government with the DUP?
We're not going into government with them. It's a confidence. It's not a full coalition like the Lib Dem thing a few years ago. It's a confidence and supply arrangement. That's right, where they support us on key votes. And I think that will happen, and we'll deliver things like the energy cap we haven't talked about. That's a fantastic thing that will help ordinary families. £8 billion extra for the NHS, £4 billion extra for schools. Okay. I'm looking forward to delivering those things to help our country in the future.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. Well, back to that delayed deal between the Tories and the DUP. In Northern Irish politics, the past is rarely another country, and that can make for some uneasy alliances. The DUP as a party came to the table with a fair amount of baggage. John Sweeney has been taking a closer look at who they are, their history and what they believe.
In Northern Ireland, history bites. The past is raw and bloody and punches through to the present. Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, but at least some of what happens here is quite different to what goes on the mainland. For example, look at this. It's a preparations for a bloody good bonfire to celebrate the victory of a Protestant king against a Catholic king in the 17th century. Theresa May's government cannot survive long without the support of 10 MPs from the Democratic Unionist Party. The DUP was founded by the late Reverend Ian Paisley in 1971, when both sides of the sectarian divide reached for their guns. This was the IRA, and this, the late Martin McGuinness, once their Chief of Staff, and much later, Northern Ireland's Deputy First Minister. And this was Gregory Campbell with his legally held revolver. Today, he's one of the DUP's 10 MPs.
You either be killed by them or kill them. Now, I know the option I want. I want to see them dead.
But that was then, and this is now. Sam McBride reports for the main loyalist newspaper in Northern Ireland.
There is no sense that the DUP is anywhere near as closely aligned to loyalist paramilitarism as Sinn Féin would have been to the IRA. I think the relationship between the DUP and loyalist paramilitaries, or those who are very close to loyalist paramilitaries, is much more complex.
Both sides have spilt blood, but because Number 10 needs the DUP, the spotlight is fiercely on the loyalist paramilitaries, in particular the Ulster Defence Association, the UDA, banned in '92, but still very much in business. The troubles are over, but the killing is not ancient history. Late last month, a man called Colin Horner, who people said was an activist in the UDA, took his little boy shopping in the Sainsbury's behind me. Shopping done, little boy's in the car, when a man comes up to Horner and shoots him dead. Now, it's believed this is an internal power struggle in the UDA. A few days later, Arlene Foster, the leader of the DUP, meets Jackie MacDonald, who many people believe is the effective leader of the UDA in Northern Ireland. So, at its most charitable, this does not look good for the DUP or the people they're negotiating with, the British government. Arlene Foster was at her feisty best when tackled about the paramilitaries during the election.
We condemn utterly the murder that occurred on Sunday, such a horrific murder in front of a child who will never be able to get over that. That will stay with that child for the rest of his young life. Just to be clear, that the UDA, the UVF and every paramilitary organisation should be out of existence.
Did you say that to Jackie MacDonald yesterday when you met him himself?
I had no need to say it to Jackie MacDonald, but Jackie MacDonald knows my views very, very clearly. If people want to move away from criminality, from terrorism, we will help them to do that. But anyone who is engaged in this sort of activity should stop, should desist, and if they don't, they should be open to the full rigour of the law.
Alistair Ross was a DUP minister in the Northern Irish Assembly until last month.
Well, I can understand why that perceptually looked pretty bad, but of course, many politicians in all parties are working with people in difficult to reach communities. And actually, most of the last 10 years has been a criticism of politicians for not engaging with people and trying to move them away from their past.
Just before the election, the Loyalist Communities Council, widely held to speak for the UDA, the UVF and the Red Hand Commando, issued a statement calling for every unionist to vote for 3 DUP candidates in Belfast.